Hello, hello. Welcome back. If you have been listening to this podcast before, I am honored that you keep on coming back and listening and receiving more. It makes my heart so happy. And if this is your first time tuning in to the Coaching Revolution podcast, a big welcome to you as well. I am thrilled that you are taking time out of your day to be here and to really go deep in order to become a better practitioner and a better human overall. I hope that you're going to love what we have here. And today's episode is a quickie. Part of the reason is because I wanted to experiment with a shorter podcast episode. And so I really want to hear from you if you like this shorter format. Please write in, let us know. Most of the episodes will probably stay longer, simply because I am a wordy human being. I love words. And if you've been listening to the podcast or you know me, you already know that. But that being said, if you like this shorter format, I'll mix some of those in as well. So again, write in, let us know if you like the quickies. Now, the other reason that today's episode is a quickie is because of this. At Applied Depth Institute, we are officially and firmly in event season. A couple of weeks ago, I hosted a community workshop called The 6 Steps to the Navigating Client Resistance Technique. In July, in a few weeks from now, I'm going to be hosting another free community event called How to Help Your Clients Get Better Results. I'm so excited to be able to host that event for all of you. There's going to be a lot of golden nuggets and insights and a lot of deep inner work in that class as well. So right now, there are a bunch of ways to learn from me and with me live and in real time. And I'm focusing a lot of attention and energy into those live real-time events, and I'm sharing such good stuff at them. So I really hope that you'll join me. And we've got more coming up in the summer and the autumn. Okay, so on to our topic for today. You may have heard the phrase that we're going to be unpacking today. It's used a lot when it comes to sales trainings that are soul-centered and teach you how to not be such an aggressive salesperson. But most people don't actually know what the phrase means. And once you really get the meaning of this phrase, it can be so helpful. Helpful for making sales, helpful for being willing to show up for sales conversations as your authentic self. It can be helpful for going deeper in your client sessions and with the groups that you lead and facilitate. And also really understanding this phrase can be so valuable for overall keeping a healthy mindset and soul set about your business, about your work, and about your life. Okay, so I'm building this phrase up quite a bit. The phrase that I'm talking about is the following one. Don't be attached to outcome. Don't be attached to outcome. Maybe you've heard this. So let's start to unpack it and let's look at it first in the context of a sales conversation. Don't be attached to outcome? huh? What does that mean? Because it kind of at first might sound like terrible advice for when you're speaking to a prospect and they seem ideal. Don't you, as the entrepreneur, as the salesperson, want a particular outcome? Don't you really want an ideal prospect to say yes to you and put down money and buy your offering? I know I do. So, not being attached to outcome, here is what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that you don't really want to make the sale. Of course you do. But that being said, being attached to making the sale means that you're making up a story about yourself, your value, and your future opportunities based on the sale. I'm going to say that again. Being attached to outcome on a sales conversation means that you're making up a story about yourself, your value, and your future opportunities and life based on the sale. And this is exactly why we don't want to be attached to an outcome. We may want an outcome, right? Like making the sale, as we said earlier, but we don't want to be attached and make up a story about what it means if we either make the sale or don't make the sale, what it means about us and who we are and our worthiness and what our business is going to be. Because that is a lot of pressure to put on one sales conversation. And when we put that amount of pressure on one sales conversation and make up a whole story about our future and who we are, whether or not we make this sale or not, then it becomes much, much harder to be fully present during that sales conversation. It becomes much, much harder to be fully yourself and to be fully authentic and to be in your power on that sales conversation. And maybe most importantly, when you are attached to outcome and making up stories based on an outcome, it becomes much, much harder to really be there for your prospect and to support your prospect, right? It's just impossible to do that if inside of yourself, you're creating a whole story about your future. So, not being attached to outcome allows you to really want to make the sale while also knowing that if for whatever reason it doesn't work out, you are still okay. Your future is still filled with plenty of opportunities. Not being attached to outcome takes the sale out of emergency status or a survival test for you and into the realm of knowing that you're okay no matter what, right? That's where you're going to do your most powerful sales work, when you know that you're okay no matter what. When you are attached to an outcome in a sales process, you're also more likely to not fully see or hear your prospect's actual needs, or if this prospect is a good fit for your work, right? Because you're so busy in this kind of like emergency state or survival state inside of your head, being like, oh my gosh, I need to make the sale. If I don't make the sale, it means my business is going to fall apart. And it means that I'm never going to have another client. And it means, right? It means I'm not good enough, right? All those things. Then we can't see or hear anything going on. Okay, so not being attached to outcome is super important when it comes to sales processes. And by the way, in our last episode, episode 16, I shared some other really powerful and important tips for sales processes. So if you're looking to learn more on that, I recommend going to episode 16. But for now, let's continue a little bit longer to unpack this phrase of don't be attached to outcome. And let's look at it now, not in the sales context, but from the coaching and practitioner context and standpoint, because we can apply all of what we just looked at when it comes to sales processes to our client work, to our one-on-one client sessions, to our group sessions and programs. In other words, if we are attached to outcome with our clients and our client sessions and in our group sessions, then we're going to end up in our heads and with our big fears, right? If we are going to make up a story about ourselves, how good we are as coaches, the success of our business, if a client has a certain outcome, or if we're going to make up a story about our client's future success based on a certain outcome that they're working on, then we are putting way too much pressure onto that outcome and into that session, right? And again, when we do this, we're not present. We're not present to ourselves, and then we're not present to our clients and to their needs. So let me give you a couple of examples on this. Let's say you're a relationship coach and your clients hire you to support them to find the relationship of their lives, right? To find their beloved and to be in a loving, respectful, just wonderful relationship with that one. So if this is you, you may want the person that your client started dating while you've been working together to become the one, right? To be the one that basically they hired you for. It's okay to want that. It's okay to want the person that your client starts dating to become the one for them. But that being said, don't get attached to that particular outcome. Don't make up a story or a narrative that if this person becomes the one, then it means you're a great coach because you helped the client find this one. If this person becomes the one for your client, then you're a great coach because you supported them to shift their beliefs. Don't become attached to outcome can also mean that this one has to be the one, or else there isn't going to be anyone else for your client, right? That you're a failure or not good enough if the person they started dating becomes the one, or you won't have any other ideas or ways of helping them. That is making up stories inside of your head about an outcome, and that is attachment to outcome. We don't want that. Here's one other example client case. You may want your client to muster up the courage to quit their job because you know that the job isn't right for them and that they deserve a raise. but don't get attached to that particular outcome. When you're attached to that particular outcome, maybe you make up a story inside your head that you're not a good enough practitioner unless your client quits their job. Or maybe you make up a story inside your head that your client is never going to find the courage to change the circumstances in their lives if they don't quit their job. None of that is actually true. And it puts so much pressure onto you and onto your client. And again, just like we have been talking about, when you get attached to an outcome like that, then you're not present to the session and to your client. You may end up, because you're so busy in your head thinking they need to quit, they need to quit, they need to quit. You may end up then not being present enough to hear that even though your client isn't happy in their job, staying in their job right now is the right choice because of other overwhelming things that are happening in their lives, right? Or because they need more time to really build the courage and overcome fears. So we don't want to get attached to outcome in our client work. And I'll take this all a step further and say that we can apply this concept of not becoming attached to outcome to any situation in our businesses and in our lives. So I'll give you a personal example. And I swear, I mean, I am such a messy human. For as much as I know this, I have to work on it every single time, like every single time. And the thing that I have to work on every single time is not being attached to outcome when I am launching a program. Okay, so every time, I am telling you, every time at the beginning of a launch of a program, I am attached to outcome. I am making up stories inside of my head that if X amount of people register for the program, then I'll feel successful. Already created enough success, right? I'm attached to outcome without even realizing it. If X amount of people don't register for the program, it feels like my business is gonna fall apart. I'm laughing at myself because it's simply not true, right? Or it means that I'm a bad marketer. It means that I'm a good marketer. If enough people, all the things, right? All the attachments. And inevitably, regardless of whether a launch is going well or not well in the beginning, because it can go either way, especially in the beginning. Things can sometimes look like they're not going to work out, but they really will. But regardless, even if I'm hitting numbers in the beginning, when I'm attaching myself to an outcome, I feel way too much pressure. I am overworking because I've attached to outcome. I am stressing myself out. I am probably not being as authentic as I can be. And inevitably, at some point, I catch myself. And I can see so clearly how I've been making up these grand outcomes of my life based on what happens on a launch. My future happiness, my future, ability to do the work that I love to do. I make up these grand stories about my worth, right? So inevitably I catch myself, and then I'm able to work on it and shift out so that I still continue to really desire a particular outcome, a particular amount of people signing up, but I am not attached. Imagine what might be different for you if you were deeply connected to your greatest desires, but not attached to outcome around them. Imagine what might be different for you if you weren't making up stories about yourself, your worth, or your future success or happiness based on how an action turns out. I know for myself, when I'm not attached to outcome, I have less stress. I feel so much more freedom and spaciousness. I'm so much less connected to fear and more connected to creativity and possibility and positivity. And when I'm not attached to outcome, I'm also more willing to take aligned action and put myself out there. So we want to be unattached to outcome. And this is also something we want to help our clients with as well, so that they can move from a place of thriving versus a place of fear or survival or false narratives about any particular outcome. So then the next question becomes how? How do you help yourself and how do you help your clients become unattached to outcome and less controlled by the stories we make up about ourselves and our future success? Well, that's more than one podcast can hold. And this is just one of dozens of techniques that I teach and train on, that you learn in the Sacred Depths Transformational Practitioner Training. Learning how to do this, learning how to detach yourself from outcome and to do this with your clients and support your clients in it, it is nuanced. It does take some work and practice, but it is so worth it. For now, I'll give you an easy next baby step. Simply come back to the awareness. Call yourself out as you make up stories and narratives and attach yourself to outcome. And if you want to go just a little step further, you can even journal on it. What are the stories that I'm creating about this sale? Or what are the stories that I'm creating about this client's success or about this launch or about losing 5 pounds, right? Whatever it is. I don't know about you, dear listener, but I am a big journaler. I love to journal. It helps me clarify my feelings, my thoughts. It brings new insights. I love that form of inner work. Okay. Well, I said this was going to be a shorter episode, but was it really? Maybe a little shorter. Like I said at the beginning, I like my words, but I hope that this was really valuable. I hope that you took exactly what you needed from today's podcast. As a reminder, again, in July, we have a free community event coming up called How to Help Your Clients Get Better Results. I'm going to drop the link for that into the show notes. And also, the next round of Sacred Depths is coming up and it is open for registration now. We're starting in October. The best rates are happening right now for Sacred Depths. I will drop that link in the show notes as well. And I'm sending you all lots of love.